Good morning. It's good to be back.
Well, look, you're fighting fit. You've dropped 15 pounds. You've hit 50. You've hit the gym. And also, you're in the middle of all that post-marathon energy yesterday in London.
I did feel that when I was at Piccadilly. There were people walking with the foil. And they were hobbling, some of them. But the looks on their face was a different kind of high. It was triumph.
Yeah, they look like turkeys about to be put in the oven.
Something about the pelvic muscles, right? They start to crunch forward.
It's all about, and the buttocks and the piriformis and the sciatica. We've got it all going on. Great to see you, man. So we're 10 academic books in. This is your third with Penguin. It's an amazing book. This is Why You Dream. All right, so we know that our brains are amazing. Of course we do. You know that better than anybody else. You're a neurobiologist. You're a neurosurgeon. But what can they do when we're asleep? Dreams are fascinating. They can predict the future. We build all these sets. We design all the clothes. We give the people the voices. There are different narratives. There are cliffhangers within dreaming that can be used. They can be used as therapy, and we've known that for ages. So beyond that, why were you compelled to write the book?
Well, because now we have neuroscience that can explain some of those patterns. So first of all, there are universal dreams, nightmares and erotic dreams. That's interesting. Maybe they shape the mind. Then there are other dreams that change patterns. When color TV came in, dream reports, waking people up to see what they're dreaming about, went from black and white to color. So when you look at different cultures over centuries, they're still reporting dreams of falling, dreams of teeth falling out. And it made me think, can these patterns, because they follow rules, right? Can these patterns be explained with brain biology? Right. And more than ever now, we have some answers to that. And I'll give you one specific example. Very few people report doing math in their dreams. And when you look at the dreaming brain, right, we have to talk about the waking brain and dreaming brain, a 24-hour cycle. The dreaming brain, the logical centers, the executive network is tamping, is down. And so people don't report a lot of math dreams. At the same time, it's highly emotional. Those emotional centers, the limbic system, is dialed up. And that correlates with a lot of people having emotional and social dreams. So being able to connect what's going on with the brain with what people have been talking about for thousands of years, that's what's fresh about this book.
There are some astonishing revelations in the book. Again, it's all science-based. There's all science to back this up. It's not you woo-woo dream analysis, which is fun. Could be right, who knows? But this is actual science based from stats and facts and all this amazing research, which has only really just begun. We're only scraping the surface here. This is Why We Dream. This is the book we're talking about with Rahul. There are rules to dreaming.
There are rules to dreaming. So one we just talked about, math is very rarely reported. The other one is nightmares. 90-something% of people report nightmares. I don't have to tell you what a nightmare is. We all know what it is. Erotic dreams tend to happen a lot. And just underneath that, you have sort of showing up for a podium naked before a speech, or missing an exam when you have an exam planned. These patterns have followed for centuries. And the question is, why? How does culture change? How do we go from a carriage and a buggy and we still have those dreams? It's because they're symbolic. They represent something social, and it's based on anxiety and emotional concerns, not logic. And that's the power of dreaming. It's a hyper-emotional state, hyper-visual state that you can't get to with the waking brain. And me, when I thought about that, I was inspired. Like, this is a portal to self-exploration that does not exist while we're awake.
So why do we dream? I know you've written a book about it, and it's a great book, but why do you think? What's the headline?
Yeah, the headline is, we dream to remain imaginative and creative and adaptive. And let me give you an example of why. So when you look at the dreaming brain, it's electrically on fire. So this myth about when you sleep, your brain is resting. No, your body's resting. Yeah. Your brain electricity is through the roof. Your metabolic usage is still there. So what's going on in the brain that's so important that forces us all to sleep? I think, if I can be bold, we sleep in order to dream. And what part of our body needs to dream? It's the brain. Let me give you an example. When we did surgical training and we had a night without sleep, the next night people reported more dreams. And as they're tracking that, if you skip a night of sleep, if you have sleep pressure, you jump into dreaming earlier. At the same time, at the very end of life, we're finding that electrical rhythms for people at the moment of cardiac death are having this robust release of neurotransmitters and maybe a massive dream. Okay, so something programmed in there.
Let's get into that. I was going to leave that to later, but because you've touched on it. So this amazing research, this discovery of after people have passed, that they carry on dreaming.
Right. So let me just frame this. So when there are measurements, so that doesn't need interpretation. In this book, when I'm putting things together, I say, I wonder, wouldn't it be elegant? Measurements are measurements, and this is how this is set up. There was a patient who had electrodes on his chest, an EKG. We get that, right? We know that electrical rhythm. Same electrodes, 96 of them can be put on your scalp, and you get a brain EKG, if you will, right? It's called an EEG. He had written, if I were to pass away by having a heart attack, don't resuscitate me. So he was also getting his brain recorded and his heart recorded. At the moment where the heart was flatlined, like we see in television, for the minutes afterwards, the brain electricity was through the roof. Expansive memory, dream type electricity. That's a measurement. I'm not here to tell you something that's my interpretation. There's about 4 or 5 more studies suggesting that. I believe the brain, in its final moments, when the heart is stopped and it still has a few minutes of glucose left in there, fires off a salvo as its ultimate goodbye. Now, that's my romantic interpretation, but the science measurements are showing that brain electricity persists minutes after the end of cardiac electricity. So it's not really heart's electrical silence that should be the time of death, but the brain's electrical silence that should be the time of death.
So it may
and
well
I've
be
been a doctor for 20 years.
Yeah, it may well be that we go out with a bang.
I think it is. I think
Whether we
it
like
is.
it or not.
I think it is. And well, people, when they come back from near-death experiences and they report all these memories that span their life, I think there may be something there.
And sleep apnea, with sleep apnea, we stop breathing, so it's temporary death as well, or it's not dissimilar. And lots of people dream at that moment. Maybe there's a connection there.
Well, that's interesting. It's not temporary death. It's just oxygen going up and down. But really what's happening is they're coming in and out of sleep. They're waking up a lot.
Right.
And Salvador Dali tried to play with that. So sleep entry and sleep exit, right? We talked about the waking brain and dreaming brain. Well, those junctions aren't like, a hair or a millisecond. There's a blurry time when you sleep during sleep entry and sleep exit for about 10, 15 minutes. Your waking brain waves and your sleeping brain waves overlap. And Salvador Dali talked about it. Inception, that movie, Christopher Nolan mentions it. That's an interesting window where people have both waking memory and dreaming memory, and they can incubate thoughts and try to have more creative thoughts.
That's lucid. That's lucid.
Well, that's a different one. So very good. Sleep entry and sleep exit is Salvador Dali, Inception, creativity.
Right.
Lucid is in the middle. You wake up within a dream.
Can you do that?
Well, okay, I got to answer this. I thought not.
Right.
And then there's a reason there's 2 chapters based on it.
Right.
I want to see rigorous science. Aristotle talked about it. And about 20, 30 years ago, they proved in sleep laboratories with the same electrodes proving that the person was asleep. There's a little squiggle for that. And the eyes can still persist. And they started communicating with left-right signals. And that is a reality. I think up to a third of people lucid dream, and it's inducible. So things that I thought didn't have science have tremendous science.
Yeah.
And the things that I assumed, I thought, hey, there's no science backing that up.
That's interesting. That's so interesting for so many different reasons. I don't sleep very well, so I've got to get on with my dreams, haven't I? And I do. I have so many dreams every night. I have 8 or 9 dreams that I can remember specifically at night. And that's because I wake up every 90 minutes.
Well, and that's a gift. So remembering our dreams, people ask me, like, why don't we remember our dreams? I think the simple answer is so we don't have waking life and dream life confusion. We want to stitch the waking life memories together. That's something called autobiographical memory. But dreams, if you want to dream, if you try to dream, if you try to remember your dreams, it is inducible. And I would explain it the ways like a placebo effect. If you believe in something, even if it doesn't have a bioactive chemical, there's something in your mind, the neurotransmitters that create that state. So people report dream journals, all these different things that they start to remember more of their dreams. And if you know it's a hypervisual, hyper-emotional state, illogical by design, I think that's a good way to think about what's going on in your life rather than turning to wellness externally, is to think about that portal to your own thoughts that you have every day, every morning.
I don't know what you think, I think dreams are the most fascinating, knowable secret that we're just yet to discover. There's the pyramids, of course, there's Stonehenge, there's the weather, there's, where energy comes from, how nature designs the sophistication, which is, the head of a a blossoming rose, but dreams are it. I think dreams could be the key to life, to knowing life.
And that we're not totally in control of our brains.
Yeah.
And that a third of our life could be spent dreaming.
Yeah.
And what is this process that's built in? We can't resist it. We don't need to activate it. It's stimulus independent. So it happens on its own. It drives us to sleep.
Yep.
What is the massive function? If you think about what's happening with the dreaming brain, in our daily life, when you take the tube or I'm on an LA freeway, we're trying to get into habits. We want to be efficient, the limited use of resources, right? Like an efficient runner. But dreaming does the opposite. It launches all these different corners of our brain and mind. And we know use it or lose it. We know in muscles atrophy, if you don't exercise, you lose it. I think what dreaming is doing is activating all those emotions and concepts that we don't need during the day, but in the future, if we needed to be adaptive, it would still be there for us. It keeps us nimble. It keeps us open-minded.
I've just started self-hypnosis a few weeks ago, and I get the dream state. I know when I'm falling. I can feel myself falling into a dream state when I'm self-hypnotizing in the afternoon to have a nap. And what do you think about that? What do you think about the correlation relationship there?
I haven't been able to tie together the science, so it's not that I'm being evasive on it. Like, for example, anesthesia dreams. Like, my patients, they wake up with a lot of different dreams.
Yeah.
We use a lot of different anesthetics. I'm a surgeon. I couldn't find a pattern there that I could explain. So I'm respectful in this book. Hypnosis, drug-based dreams. There were too much for me to corral into a love story for dreaming.
There seems to be different
sleep entry
authors,
is different.
don't they? They're like a psilocybin hallucination will be from a different author, different school of film, if you like.
Very interesting. So hallucination versus dreaming versus psychedelic experiences. So we do know you might feel like you're in a dreamy state, but with psychedelics, all the different types, there's ego dissolution. The default mode network is dampened. In dreaming, you are fully inhabiting the experience. You're like you're in the driver's seat of a car you can't control. But with lucid dreaming that you mentioned earlier, some people can actually steer the direction of the dream while they're in the dream. And when you think about what I'm talking about, if people could just walk away and realize there's so much inside us, there's so much more we have to learn, but really that it's partially within your control. You can pay more attention to sleep entry for creative purposes. You can avoid the phone in the morning when you wake up to see what you were thinking about, to hold on to those solar flares of dreaming. You can try to become a lucid dreamer for creative purposes. So all of these things are superpowers within us that we can cultivate, that we don't have to spend money on, that we don't have to rely on somebody external, which sometimes can lead to exploitation, as we know.
Yeah, so I've been in control of dreams thinking, oh, I'm in control of this dream. But the problem is the second you realize that, you're no longer in control of it.
That's interesting.
It's
fragile.
Bummer.
No, it's fragile. The lucid dreaming, people come in and out of it. It's not like, I'm lucid dreaming.
Yeah.
There's a feeling of, and think about it, the memory system that dreams rely on, people say they get up to go to the bathroom, then they come back into a dream.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable to me.
But the dreams themselves, like I say, you've got the people's faces that you've recreated perfectly. You've designed their wardrobe, the rooms they're in, the worlds they're in, the cars they're driving. I mean, what is going on?
The bold statement there is that our creative abilities are really coming from the dreaming process. A hyper imaginative, what they call divergent thinking. Don't just go for the easy connection of the dots. Connect the dots that are farther away. These wider associations happen every night in our brain. So when you have that aha moment during the day, it's not because you're brilliant with your executive network trying to get from A to B. It's all that work that was done for you the night before.
Geez. No. Do you think creative people dream more than non-creative people?
By report, we don't have a scientific measurement for that, but when you ask for questionnaires, absolutely, they have more nightmares as well.
Maybe because they don't sleep as much, perhaps.
Yeah, or they're just imaginative during the day and imaginative during the night, and they kind of bleeds into each other.
Gym.
Yeah, mind gym.
Loads of questions coming in. One of the first things our brain does to us when we go to sleep and start to dream is it paralyzes our body for our own safety. So
when you have the most wild dreams in REM, there is a chemical paralysis of the body. Now, to me, that's a measurement. My interpretation is this allows us to dream wildly without us acting out our dreams.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
Or doing ourselves harm.
Right.
Yeah. Other people have said that before, haven't they? Louise from Coventry here. I don't think I dream, says Louise. Would I? Am I dreaming? Does everybody dream? My Garmin watch tells me I don't dream.
Yeah. Well, when we talk about dreaming, we can't talk in absolute. So when I said very few people report math, there'll be some people. And there are some people say, I've never had it. They know what a dream is. They know what a nightmare is. But they say, I don't remember our dreams. What I would say is those people that don't remember their dreams, the electrical signatures at night are just as wild as those people say we dream quite a bit.
Right, this book is amazing. This is why we dream. This is why you dream. Why we dream. It's called "This Is Why You Dream" by Rahul Jandial, who we're talking to now. Sunday Times best-selling author. He's here for a week. He's going to party on Friday. Everyone's invited. Rosita says, "Please can you ask Rahul about sleep paralysis? I get it a couple of times a week with terrible hallucinations. I'd really appreciate any advice."
Okay. All right. This is a big topic because a lot of people have this. I was surprised to hear how many people have it. So, sleep paralysis is the original nightmare. It's not technically a nightmare because a nightmare is by definition something that wakes you up and sears things into your memory. Sleep paralysis is an issue with sleep exit. We talked about sleep entry as a way to incubate creativity. Sleep paralysis is this feeling like there's a suffocation, somebody sitting on top of your chest and maybe even violating you. These reports are so consistent that different cultures have come up with explanations for it, like incubus and succubus. So sleep paralysis, scientifically, is waking up while your body's still in lockdown. So those people tend to have a massive anxiety attack. The treatment for sleep paralysis is much like what they would guide for anxiety attacks. Slow, deep, rhythmic breathing to give yourself time to match your sleep exit. So your chemicals and your mind are in sync, and then you wake up as you're thinking about waking up. So that the techniques used for sleep paralysis are also the same techniques we use for general anxiety management.
Right, it's all in the book, seriously. What about nightmares? You talk about nightmares. Any handy hints that you want to share today?
Nightmares can be rescripted. I was fascinated by this. They're a product of our imagination. And with therapists, there are reports that the ending of a nightmare, if you're having persistent nightmares, can be rescripted with therapy, imagery, rehearsal, training. The other thing I want people to know about nightmares is they're a psychological thermometer. If we have headaches and they're getting worse, we know to call a doctor. If we have pain and it's getting worse, we know to get a doctor. If you have new onset nightmares and they're increasing and they're getting worse, consider it a psychological thermometer and talk to a therapist or a doctor. That would be my tip.
And can you do anything? Journaling? Does that help? Write it down?
People report a lot of different things.
Right.
I think just the effort to try to engage your dreaming, to remember your dreaming, whichever process you have.
Surrender to it.
Yeah, and welcome it. And whether it's your notes app or a journal.
Honor it.
And
what's he trying to tell you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the last chapter is really, we have this rare state of mind that is built into us. And on the occasion we can remember dreams, there are some that I think are worth taking a deeper look at. The obvious one, showing up naked for a podium, we know what that is, right? Some are just static. That doesn't make sense at all. Some are epic dreams that happen end of life. People have certain dreams. Pregnant women have certain dreams. So those don't really require interpretation. But a deeply emotional one, a deeply visual one, like that's the one to go after. That's the one to take time during the day and say, what was that about? What was that social situation about? What was that visual situation about? I think that's something I've definitely included in my life since.
I love the fact we can park some dreams. That's great. It's like the shopping, isn't it? You get your peas, your beans, your bread. You know all that. And then what should we have fancy for the weekend? And fancy for the weekend is the emotional stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's like waking thought. Let's not hold dreaming thought to a standard we wouldn't waking thought. Not everything we think about during the day is worth holding on to. Because
you've now more than dipped your toe into this particular pool, and you're making friends with the science of dreaming. Have you, since you've been writing this book and this book has now come out, do you now have a different relationship with your own dreams?
I do. I was using sleep entry to sort of run through surgical planning for a while. That's been out there. I liked that there was science behind it. But I have the luxury of a bed and time in the morning now to get up slowly. And I got to tell you, when I have almost all of my ideas have come in that morning, the first sort of 5-10 minutes, especially if I'm sort of waking up and falling back asleep again. There's some thinking that's going on in my mind in that time frame that I don't have the rest of the day. So when I've had ideas, it's in that window. Most of them are bad, but that is the idea generator.
Yeah, of course.
And that's how it works.
Yeah, and you wouldn't want them all to be good, because then you'd have to spend your whole life executing these amazing ideas.
Oh, yeah. Or they aren't cutting edge, right?
Yeah.
If you're only dropping good ideas, you're not at the edge of it.
I say I sleep badly. I'm all right with how I sleep. You know, I've sort of come to terms that I've met it in the middle somewhere, because why wouldn't I? I've got to meet it where it is, because there's no point otherwise. But I do now nap in the day, and you speak to the power of a nap.
Napping is something that's becoming popular, and I think there is now some science behind it. The question is the duration of the nap. Is 20, 30 minutes good for you, or is like 60 minutes? I think the science is suggesting 20, 30 minutes. Don't let it be something that disrupts sleep later on.
Sleep drive.
Correct. Just like, sleep drive, sleep pressure. I think the science is suggesting short naps can be helpful. I think we know that. People have napped we were talking about fasting earlier. We know that there are these things that have worked for a long time. I like the fact now that I can put some science behind some of these things.
Terry from Dorset says, this is utterly fascinating with Dr. Rahul. As a nurse, we always talk to patients immediately after death, so they know they're not alone. Now I know why.
That's beautiful.
Wow.
That's beautiful.
Because their brain is still ongoing.
Well, just think about how that works. The last squeeze of your heart
Oh my gosh.
sends a surge of blood, and the way the arteries shut down is they shut down on the limbs first.
Oh.
So the last squeeze of your heart sends blood up your carotids. So you can imagine the last sort of blood vessels in the brain for a minute or two are still getting oxygenated blood. And those precious moments, if I may, this is the part of the book that touched me the most was, I did transplant surgery for a while. The other organs, they whimper as they fade. But the brain, it seems, somehow uses its last surge of glucose in blood to really just explode with a salvo of neurotransmitters. I think that is so beautiful and so romantic. Right. And there's a measurement for that. Electrical brain activity 1 to 2 minutes after loss of electrical activity with the heart. It's not cardiac death that matters. It's brain death. And that happens a minute or two after we flatline. And this is science. This is a measurement, not my take on it.
That is a big deal, man.
It is a big deal. And that's what I end the book with.
Especially if you're with somebody, who you love in an end-of-life situation.
Yeah.
So it's so important to carry on to them for 5-10 minutes afterwards.
It's those 5 minutes afterwards that person may be experiencing the greatest thing, the greatest emotion, the greatest memories that human, that brain ever experienced might be in those first few minutes after cardiac death.
What's going on with these pesky advertisers targeting our
They're
dreams?
Shameless. They're shameless, and there's gadgets everywhere.
What's going on?
Well, if you think about it this way, a couple hundred years ago, people were sleeping and they'd put like a finger in a cup of water to see if they had more dreams about water.
Yeah, or it makes you want to pee.
Yeah. So your brain is not completely shut off when you're dreaming, right? You wake up to alarms, you wake up to certain smells, so you're not completely closed off. And so marketers are trying to figure out if they play a certain song or play a certain song with a certain scent, if they can influence behavior. It's not surprising with all the gadgets that are going to be in our rooms. I would say, neural data should be protected. That's something that you got to sign off on, especially because when you're sleeping, you're vulnerable to ideas you wouldn't be while you're awake. So it should be, I think, an increasingly protected space.
So now that you've written the book and now that you're talking about the book, as you go to bed at night, are you more thoughtful of what's going on? What have been your personal experiences in the middle of the night since this book? What do you think about the future of your own dreams? What do you think about the future of the world's dreams as we wake up to the reality, the proper science behind dreaming, as opposed to the snake oils salesman sort of fascination?
Yeah, so the things I would say are dreams can be induced, dreams can be remembered, dreams serve a vital function in us. And that I'm grateful that the human brain dreams, because it keeps us vibrant, flexible in our thinking, imaginative, able to connect with people in a social setting that we wouldn't otherwise. And I think for me personally, what I've done is really try to protect the 15 minutes before I go to sleep and the 5-10 minutes when I wake up. I haven't had a lucid dream, but I know people who've helped on this book have started to lucid
You're on the
dream.
way. I can see the spark in your eyes.
Yeah, but to know there's real science behind it, I'm actually more open to it. That it's not metaphysical. It's actually neuroscience. To me, I think that brings more people into it. And the sleep entry period is very important to me because whatever my challenge is during the day, or whatever the riddle is I can't solve, I think about it as the last thing as I drift off.
Yeah.
So I'm a lot more. They talk about sleep hygiene to get more sleep. Maybe I call this dream hygiene. I feed my dreams, and I try. And I know they're putting in work.
Feed your dreams, man.
Feed your dreams, man, and get something out of it.
What about like fast forwarding 25 years or maybe 10 years? Who knows what's going to happen with this research and the knowledge that you discover and your friends discover? What about the fact that in the future we won't separate the day being awake from being asleep as two separate entities, two separate ways of existing, and the fact that when we're asleep we're as alive and almost as awake as when we're not? Why separate the two? Maybe that's conventional thinking as opposed to open-minded wisdom. You can have it is a 24-hour day experience as opposed to an 8-16.
It is. I mean, that's a big question, and what I would say is the waking brain has that autobiographical memory.
Yeah.
So the evolutionary advantage was to have our brains fine-tuned and kept open-minded at night. But as the light came today, that you go out for the tasks in front of you, whether that's hunting or navigating the streets. And to do that, we need to stitch the memories from the days before.
Yeah.
I have been the person from LA to here and back to LA. That autobiographical memory, I think, is why dreams are not held on to, even though they're doing quite a bit of work for us while we sleep.
Wow. Okay. Well, we're just about done. Is there anything else you'd like to say to people listening?
It's good to be back in London.
Hey, come on. Very quickly. I know we're over time, but very, very quickly. By the way, that was Rahul talking about his book, This Is Why You Dream. It's out now. It's amazing what your sleeping brain reveals about your waking life. A lot of people running the marathon yesterday, most people have a wobble to the extent that they can't finish between mile 25 and the finish, as opposed to the preceding 25 miles. And it has been said that it's because their brain tricks them into thinking that, because they see the finish line and it says, you've finished, and literally it sends a message to their body that it can give up. Does that make sense to you or not?
It's almost like anticipatory fatigue or something like that. But the way I would tie in marathons with dreaming as just this, that I had to get this to you because we talked about it last time. You ran 100 miles one time, right? When you run in your dreams, the neurons are firing no differently than when you run in real life.
Oh, let's do that then from now on.
But you're not moving.
Not less tiring.
It's tiring. You're not moving, but the brain activity is the same. I think it's a powerful thing to say about dreams.
It's always great to have you. You've got amazing energy, but never better than today. I have to say, turning the big 5-0 has served you well.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Any other life changes?
Well, the boys are now men. They're in university, so I'm bouncing back between LA and London more. And I was at the National Gallery looking at art and just drifting through different places. And LA freeways and London streets, I got it good.
All right, mate. Great to see you again. There
Bye
he
now.
is, Rahul Jandial. This is why you dream. Transformational. Brian Fogel, how inspiring that dreams and our imagination stay boundless for anyone in the arts and creative spaces. This is a must read, and there's so much blurb on the back from so many people who you know and love.